Excellent. Okay, great. I'm glad we got that started. So we're a couple of minutes early. I have a few people already in chat hanging out, and we tested the system. So if people have questions for you about today's subject or previous podcasts, they'll be able to call in and reach you here.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get started then. For everyone here, this is Dark Matter After Midnight. Our guest is Micah Dank. This is March 11th, 2021. And this is, I believe the third time we've had him live. We've spoken about astrotheology, about his books on the topic, his fictional works, Illuminati, quote unquote, hand signs, symbolism. And then today we're going to be speaking about some of the biblical apocrypha. So why don't you introduce yourself to new listeners and let them know a bit about your background as far as the Bible and the apocrypha.
Okay, so yeah, I could do that. So basically, I in 2012, 2013, I had moved to, 2013, 2014, I moved to Boston for a new job. I'm from Long Island. And when I got there with an ex that I'm no longer with, we spent a lot of time just getting to know the area. But for the most part, there wasn't a whole lot of people that we knew. So what we would do is we would just sit at home, watch TV. The iPad just came out, so I was on the iPad just going down different rabbit holes, and I came across Jordan Maxwell, one of his works. And he was talking about how, in the particular video that I saw, he was talking about how the disciples were asking Jesus where to meet him for the Passover. And he told them to go into town and you'll see a man with the water pitcher and follow him into that house. Now, in astrology, each sign is called a house. And the other thing, too, that he brought up was that men never carried water back in the day. That was a woman's job. It was very effeminate. So I thought that was interesting. And then I came across another guy named Santos Bonacci who just blew my mind with astrology. And I started studying it hardcore. And then there was just so much stuff that I had learned that at some point I was able to start decoding things my own with what I had learned. And I mean, that's basically it. And at that point, I realized I had to write about this. I had to teach people this. It was like my calling. It was, sometimes you just wake up and you just know what you're supposed to do. That's kind of my moment there.
Well, I know many of our listeners here are fans of Jordan Maxwell, and Jordan Maxwell had a tremendous impact on a lot of people as far as opening their eyes to the nature of symbolism in plain sight and this other level of communication. So, I've always found his work to be interesting, and what you've done, though, is you've taken this information and you've put it into the format of fiction. Do you want to let people in a little bit about your books and how you've done this?
Yeah, so basically, it's a lot of astrotheology, a lot of the stuff that I've come up with, some stuff that I got from Santos, some stuff that I got from Jordan, basically the best stuff from them, including my own original work. And what I did was I came up with a 6-book series. They're thrillers. They're very Dan Brown-like with cryptograms and anagrams and decoding things. And in this world that I've created, the elite, much like in reality, use astrology against the people without them knowing it. So it's truth in fiction, much like the book 1984 was. And that's basically what I've done. I've come out with it, and it's been received very well so far. I'm in the process right now of pitching it to movie producers, or my publicist is, I should say.
Okay, and for people who are new to hearing you, this is Micah Dank. Name some of the other podcasts that you've been on that people might have heard you on. I think I first heard you on, was it Sam Tripoli? Who was it?
Tinfoil Hat.
Yeah, that's right. What are some other ones you've been on?
I was on Tinfoil Hat. I was on Macroaggression. I was on the Chrissy Mayer podcast. I was on Fringe Network. I was on Fringe, the Fringe Center. My family thinks I'm crazy. Honestly, I've done like 75 podcasts since June with different people. I couldn't even keep a list. I mean, I have a list, but I don't have it right now.
Well, I have to say, every time you come on, you bring on new information to these topics that many of us have been looking at for years. And so it's always interesting to hear your take on things. You mentioned anagrams, cryptograms. We talk about these things on this channel too, and find these things to be really curious. Just
Right.
how prevalent they are, and we talked about this last time you were here about the use of symbolic language. But anyway,
Right.
a moment ago you said truth in fiction is essentially what you're writing. And
Right.
do you think that there's any way you can get this into a movie without your message being filtered out?
Well, see, I have put thought into that, and the truth of the matter is that when you negotiate with movie producers, as I'm starting to find out, they want to feel like they have the big dick in their hand. Do you know what I mean? So they kind of want to be like, but we'll change this. And the way I see it, I'm like, you know what? Honestly, if it gets it out there, it gets it out there. If they change it a little bit, that's fine because it will drive an audience to the books. And then what will happen in turn is the people will read the books and then pounce back at the studios and be like, "Why did you mess with it so much?" So it's a win-win either way, the way I see it.
Okay, I like that. It makes a lot of sense. It definitely does, and it creates a bit of a dialogue. And anything that they're trying to obscure is what people will absolutely rush for.
Right.
Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to this. You had brought up the Book of Enoch the last time we had chatted, and this is another one of these interesting books because it features so prominently in many of these conspiracy theories where they get into the idea of giants having actually existed, the idea of some previous civilization, the tampering of the human race by some other entities, the Nephilim, etc. Um, so let's start with the Book of Enoch. Where does this fit in the astrotheology picture?
So much like all the um, all the Gnostic texts that were removed from the Bible in 1684, the Book of Enoch is still actually in the Ethiopian Bible. They're an interesting people, actually. They have their New Year is September 11th. They have 13 months. It's 12 months at 30 days and 1 month at 5 days. Their New Year is on September 11th. Go figure. And supposedly they have the Ark of the Covenant in one of their oldest churches. In fact, there was a news story that came out that was talking about how 75 people tried to break into it and they were all massacred because they have such good security there. So, but besides Ethiopia, the Book of Enoch was basically it was removed from the Bible, and my contention is this is an astrology book, just like the Bible. If you've heard me speak previously, you know that the Bible is just an astrology book, and the Book of Enoch is absolutely no different. The only reason it was removed from the Bible, as far as I'm concerned, was because it openly talks about astrology in some places, whereas in the Bible it's covertly written.
Okay, that's very interesting, and yeah, that's true. It's still in the Ethiopian Bible, whereas it was excised from everyone else's version centuries ago. And yeah, that would make sense because if it was overt, it would be more difficult to hide what you've unveiled that exists right there in the mainstream version of the Bible. So,
Right.
okay, now the character Enoch, he's a fascinating character. So he's sort of an intermediary between God and these fallen angels. What's the story behind this Enoch?
Uh, he's Noah's great grandfather. And the story of him was basically he's mentioned in the original Bible, where it's given his lifespan, and it specifically says that he did not die. It says that God took him directly to heaven, much like Elijah, much like Jesus. So only a couple people went directly to heaven while still alive, and Enoch was supposedly one of them. Where if you get into deeper text, which I'm not going to do, you'll find that he becomes what's known as Metatron, um, which is just basically his evolved form. But he was just a humble guy. And like I say, I have a different take on the Book of Enoch because you can look at all the giants and this and that. I'm not concerned with that. You know, what I do is I pulled the astrology out from it, and it's just an encoded book. That's all it is.
Well, this is my
And
first time hearing this. I mean, I've read the Book of Enoch. I'm familiar with all these stories about this conspiracy among these angels, the Watchers, to basically have their way with Earth and their punishment and the results of that, and all the speculation. Did they survive the flood, etc.? But I'd never heard that the Book of Enoch was also
Yeah.
an astrotheological text.
Oh yeah, I've decoded it, and I'm going to go over it with you guys if you guys permit me.
Absolutely. And if anybody has any questions in the chat here, I'll just I have the number they can call in, or they can leave them and we'll ask them as we have openings here. So yeah, let's go ahead and proceed with that because this is, again, very new information.
If you go into chapter 2, the first verse that I've been able to, it's fairly obvious. It's 2.1. Observe ye everything that takes place in the heaven, how they do not change their orbits, and the luminaries which are in the heaven, how they all rise and set in order, each in its season, and transgress not against their appointed order. So they're talking about the order of the zodiac and how it doesn't change, it always stays the same, everything stays the same. Then they openly talk about it in chapter 8, 8.2. Some Jaza taught enchantments, Armoros, the resolving of enchantments, Barakiel taught astrology, Kokabel, the constellations, Ezekiel, the knowledge of the clouds, and Sariel, the course of the moon. Now notice almost all of them end in L. It's a common ending. You have Michael, Raphael, Rachel, Michelle. I mean, I can go on forever. El is a common ending, and it was the name of God. And in the Egyptian times, the gods were Isis, Ra, and El, and you put it together, and that's where you get Israel from.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, definitely see that, and that's right. With all these angels, they have that same exact suffix, and I see that a lot. El is often used. We see it in a lot of the symbolism around here. I assumed it had meant something like that, Saturn or something having to do with the elder god.
No, that's what the Elohim are. The Elohim are the planets. That's what the Elohim are. And Saturn was the king of the planets because it was the furthest one out there. In the Bible, Jesus leaves when he's 12 and he comes back when he's 30. Well, the reason he comes back when he's 30 is because the ancient Jews weren't allowed to teach until Saturn came back in place. See, they were the people of Aries, but they worshipped Saturn. That's why the day of rest is the Saturday. Okay, Saturn is known as the black cube. That's why the Jews have the black cube on their head when they pray. That's why the Muslims walk around a giant black cube in Mecca. Okay, it goes back to that. That's why in Saturn too, it has rings. That's why you wear wedding rings when you devote yourself to your God and to your wife or your husband. That's why also that women would wear earrings. Women get their ears pierced and they wear earrings because they were told to listen to their God, and their God was Saturn. So Saturn was a major player, and you can still see it sometimes in the sky when it comes close to. You can see it. But if you want, I could start going into decoding some other passages, and I could show you that there's two ways to read it. You could read the story literally, just like you could do with the Bible. There's people that take it literally, but don't do that. There's people who you have to read it. You have to read what's under it. So you have to understand the signs.
Yeah, I would say let's proceed with this esoteric side of it, because that's really what we're always looking at on this channel. And this material is definitely very, very interesting and compelling. And the esoteric side is the part that's in our face, but you have to have the right interpretation. So yeah, please.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So 14:11. Its ceiling was like the path of the stars and the lightnings, and between them was a fiery cherubim, and the heaven was clear as water. So that could mean the sign of Aquarius, the man with the water pitcher and the water, or it could mean Pisces, as they are both the signs with the water. Now, in astrology, Aquarius is an air sign and Pisces is a water sign. But in the Bible, you're talking about these Gnostic texts like the Book of Enoch and such, when you mention water, that could also speak of Aquarius because he's the man with the water pitcher. So there's the water. Another thing that gives credence to that is in 14:13, he says, "And I entered into that house, and it was hot as fire and cold as ice." So the sun has entered either Aquarius or Pisces. As those are the winter months, the sun is both hot and in the middle of winter, so both cold as ice. So the sun is blazing hot, but it's cold in the winter. It's important to know, too, that hell hell is not hot. It's not a flaming inferno. Okay? Dante Alighieri knew this in the 1300s. That's why when he talked about Satan in his lair, okay, when he was eating the three most terrible people on earth, it was Brutus, Cassius, and Judas. Satan is a giant creature and he's up to his waist in a frozen lake because his wings are so powerful that they keep blowing the wind so strong that it freezes over. So he's basically stuck in place. And hell, okay, the word inferno goes back to Italian, which is inverno. That's the word for it. Well, inverno means winter. So hell is actually cold. There is no metaphysical place where you're going to go to hell and burn for all eternity. For starters, souls do not have nerve endings, so they would not respond to temperature. Just right off the bat, that just makes sense. Secondly, you're also talking about hell being a place of cold. Hell is on Earth, and it's the winter months. And those are the months that everybody feared. The sun would come out less. The animals would come out, and they would be starving. They would hunt. It was very dangerous for people back in the day. But if I continue and I go to chapter 14, 15, and I beheld a vision, and lo, there was a second house greater than the former, and the entire portal stood open before me, and it was built of flames of fire. And in every respect, it so excelled in splendor and magnificence and extent that I cannot describe to you its splendor and extent. And its floor was of fire, and its above were lightnings and the path to the stars, and its ceiling was also flaming fire. And I looked and saw therein a lofty throne. Its appearance was crystal, and the wheels thereof is the shining sun. So they're talking about the sun and its kingdom, okay, when it's on the throne. It's a metaphor. The sun's in his kingdom. The sun is in his kingdom during the time of Leo, because the ruling planet of Leo is actually the sun. It's the only time. It's the only planet. It's the only sign that the sun rules over. It's Leo. Also, before now, we know the previous passage was talking about Aquarius and not Pisces because there was confusion over the water. Well, we know this because Leo and Aquarius are opposing signs. What happens in the Bible and the Gnostic text when you discern this stuff is you realize that a phrase will talk about a sign, right? And then the next phrase will talk about its neighboring sign to the right or the left, or its cross sign. Those are the most important signs in astrology, is your cross sign or your neighboring sign. So we know these were cross signs. So we know the before one was Aquarius. If I go to 17:2, and they brought me to the place of darkness and to a mountain, the point of whose summit reached heaven. They're talking about darkness, which is correlated to winter, which makes sense. So it's one of the winter months. And then I saw the place of the luminaries and the treasuries of the stars and of the thunder, and in the uttermost depth were a fiery bow and arrow and their quiver. Well, we know now that it was a winter sign, right? Well, Sagittarius is a winter sign, and Sagittarius is the man with the bow and the arrow. It's just a metaphor to explain the man with the bow and the arrow when they said, where were a fiery bow and arrow and their quiver. So that's how you know they're just referencing that.
Okay. So you continue down the line, and you're able to actually see that there is a clear, discernible astrological pattern here. That's rather remarkable.
I could really do this with any Gnostic text, to be honest with you. Any book in the Bible, any Gnostic text, that's what they are. They're just hidden astrology books. They hide the astrology in it because it was sacred knowledge. Before the year 325 AD, when Constantine united everybody into a legitimate Christianity, and when he united everybody, it's up in the air whether it was on his deathbed, he was baptized, or it was whatever he did, he united everybody under literal Christianity, which means to take the Bible literally. Now, he had a nephew named Julian the Apostate, whose works you could still buy today. Okay, and what he did was he tried to bring everyone back to sun worship. And he ended up getting an arrow in his back for his troubles for it. See, you have to understand is that before Constantine, original Christians up until then were known as Helio-Gnostics, which is basically, if you break it down, it's sun worship. They were sun worshippers. They knew that these books were not meant to be taken literally.
Okay. So you say worshippers then. So this means that they have knowledge about how it actually works as far as its time and its cycles and its seasons. So are they literally worshiping it, or do they just know too much about the mechanical function of it?
It's a combination of both. You have to understand too is that if you look at pictures of Jesus, of Ra, of Osiris, of Dionysus, of Dagon, of any of these gods that were born on December 25th, okay, or that who were celebrated the birth of December 25th, they all of them have, when they're depicted, okay, they have the sun behind their head. You can look up pictures of Jesus. You can go to Google and look up pictures of Jesus. You know, the white Jesus. I can get into who that is later because that's actually a human. But any picture of Jesus, you have the sun behind his back, and that tells you that he's the sun.
Right, this halo. The halo is the sun. And this thing about, the white Jesus and its origin, that's a fascinating topic. I'd like to get into that. I'm putting it out there in the chat as well that they can call or enter their questions into the chat about any of the stuff that you're bringing up. But that's really interesting there about Constantine put us into the literal, which is the exoteric, and essentially what buried the rest. But their internal priesthood, are they still appraised of what it really means?
Well, I would think, first of all, this shit is definitely. Can I curse? I forget.
Oh, by
I
all
always
means.
forget with you.
No censorship
All right.
here. Say what you
I
gotta
always
say.
forget. I don't know if we're on Fringe or whatever. I don't know. So yeah. You have to understand is that. Actually, what were we just talking about?
Oh, just now we were talking about the. You brought up Julian the apostate and how basically the thing was turned into
Oh,
literal.
you asked me.
And
You asked me. Do they still know? Okay,
yeah,
yeah. So, 100% the stuff is in the Vatican archives. 100%, which is why it's so important that people get into them with a. They just need to get into them because they have all this stuff. The stuff they have in there is unbelievable. Priests don't know. They're taught a literal. Rabbis don't know. They're taught a literal. Most of the people who guide you spiritually on earth, as far as the major religions go, have no clue what they're really talking about. I mean, I went so far as to start doing the Quran, and I stopped myself, and I went, I'm not going to break that bubble yet. I'm not ready for that. But
okay, now as far as this Vatican archives, is this something that's a part of your book? Do you delve into the Vatican, what they may be hiding?
I do. It's the topic of my first two books, really, because there's a group of people, the Vatican being one of them, and in my book I explain and expose how. Look, I've been on your show 3 times. 3 times we've talked about astrotheology and astrology in the Bible, right? I'm fairly comfortable that you're comfortable enough to know that, like, you can give me a passage and I could read it astrologically, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure that we're on the same page. So what I do is I explain there's people out there, including the Vatican, including the Roman Catholicism, who do not want you to know there's any astrology in the Bible. Do you know why astrology is so important?
I can only guess. I mean, I know billionaires care about it. It has some predictive capability, and I see that it's obviously very important, but it's covert, so it's unignorable as far as I'm concerned. But no, I don't actually know what makes it so important to them.
Imagine for a second that we had a cataclysmic event on Earth, okay? And you lost all your podcasting equipment and you lost your house, and for some reason we ended up back into caves hunting and gathering, okay? Finding God would be very low on that list. Okay, what we would need to do is we would need to know when the sun is out because it's daytime and it scares away the evil monsters at night, okay? Because night is considered the enemy. Every day, Horus and Set. That's why you have a sunset. Set is the 6 signs under, and Horus is the 6 signs above. Horus takes 12 steps in the sky. That's why when you ask what hour is just an anagram for Horus. What we would need to do is we would need to know when the sun was going to be out, when it goes down. We would need to know that. We don't have watches, smartphones, tablets, calendars even. We're very spoiled right now because we have all that. But the ancients needed to figure this out. And what they needed to figure out was not only when the day and night comes, because, okay, maybe within a couple days you could land that, but what you needed to know was when it's time to plant, when it's time to harvest, when winter is going to come. You needed to know all this kind of stuff without calendars. All they had was like sundials, and they could look at the stars in a smog-free, no pollution sky. They could see the whole stars, and they would follow it, and they set their days up for it. That's why the Bible is simply that, because it's the oldest science, it's the ancient science, and that's all there really is. You know,
I see that.
We've evolved spiritually. We've evolved spiritually, that's for sure. But there's no magic. There's no magic in the sky. Now, this is also coming from someone who believes in a creator. I call it prime creator because I do think that there was a creator. I do. I don't think that it was created like in the Bible. And I don't think that evolution explains everything. I think it could be a combination of both. But I don't pretend to understand something that in string theory, in physics, we have what's known as 11 dimensions in M theory. Okay? I don't pretend to know a creator when we can't figure our third dimension out who can create 11 dimensions that are proven. I don't pretend to know that. But back to the point. This is the ancient science and everything in the Bible. If I say to you, pride comes before the fall, have I asked you this before?
Yeah, you have asked it before, but I'm sure there's people listening who haven't heard this yet.
The phrase pride comes before the fall has been abused so many times by preachers, by this, by that. And how you read it literally is you say that your ego will be your downfall. But if you read it astrologically, which makes just as much sense, and when you realize that it's not just this phrase, but it's so many hundreds and thousands of other phrases too, okay? Pride comes before the fall. Leo is the lion. A group of lions is called a pride. Leo is in July and August. That's before the fall. And it's this kind of encodings that they put in the Bible so that if someone had the knowledge to read it and knew their signs. I mean, in Job, God says, do you know the Mazzaroth? That's his first question when he finally speaks up to Job. The Mazzaroth literally means the zodiac. Over time, Mazzaroth becomes Mazalot, and then over time, Mazalot becomes Mazel Tov. You know how old that word is? So this was originally Mazzaroth. But Mazel Tov literally means good fortune from the stars.
Okay,
so,
this is interesting because it's like you have a statement that's just basically saying this comes before that. One comes before two. And they took it to mean you shouldn't be prideful. You have to put your ego down or you'll fall. They made a statement about it. They extrapolate all that out of it. And then that becomes part of the religion. I mean, it's just fascinating how the esoteric is so on point with this objective reality that you can observe. And then the exoteric, what the masses are given, is just pure misinformation.
Right. But you have to remember is that the ancient Christians were reading the Bible properly. They knew this was all stuff. I'll give you an example. Did I go over this to you? Did we talk about the Council of Jamnia last time we spoke?
Actually, we should bring this up again if we had, because I'm not recalling this, but this is actually something we should cover now.
What I'm about to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think we need because I'm sort of like looking at, I have some questions in the chat as well, and I think other people have questions on this area. And someone else is also wanting to know more about this 13th month or the 13th sign from the Ethiopian.
Okay. Let me address that one real quick. The 13th sign is Ophiuchus, and it's the snake bearer. Okay? And the reason that they tried to include it a few years ago, it's because as time goes along, they try and bring you further and further away with baby steps away from the true knowledge, away from the true science that I speak about, that I try and talk about. Okay? The 13th sign, when you include it into the zodiac, you no longer have a perfect cross when you separate the solstices and the equinox and you link them together. The science does not work. Because when you add that, things like Scorpio, who's known as the betrayer, Scorpio is known as the betrayer, okay? Because when a scorpion bites you, it leaves an imprint in your hand that looks like a pair of lips. And that's where the mafia gets the kiss of death from, okay? Scorpio is the betrayer. That's why Judas betrayed Jesus with a kiss. He didn't point him out. He didn't throw a rock at him. He didn't any of that. Take your pick. He gave him a kiss. And that's why, because they knew what this was. This was an ancient science. And when you add the 13th sign in, none of the science makes sense. So they entered that just to keep people dumb. And thankfully, it didn't take off because a lot of people pushed back.
Wow. Okay. Makes a lot more sense here. And it makes a lot more sense that, yes, in order to keep the information out of the minds of the masses, they have to kind of bury it. Like you mentioned, the Book of Enoch not being included when apparently it's just as much about astrology as all the other books.
They're all the same. They're all astrology books, all of them, every single one of them. I've done the Book of Revelation. I've done the Book of Enoch. I've done the Book of Matthew line for line. I've done the Book of Job. I've done everything. Everything is the same thing.
Okay, and I'm asking people here in the chat now, if anybody wants to call in, by all means, 833-311-1984, or you can ask questions here in the chat. Someone wants to know if you've ever done a podcast interview with Jordan Maxwell.
No, I haven't. And for the love of God, I've been trying to. One of the podcasters that I did recently, I mean in the last couple of months, had interviewed Maxwell on the show. See, Maxwell is like pushing 90 right now, and his health is not in order. But he did give me his private email, and I sent him an email he hasn't responded to yet. I just don't think the guy's doing well. I kind of came into the scene a little too late, but if I was in 2 years earlier, I would have absolutely. I mean, he was the first name in my first book's dedication page.
Oh, cool. Absolutely interesting there. 'Cause I would imagine he would like to hear that. I think I might have his thing on Skype, but yeah, absolutely. He's a little difficult to reach at the moment, but I'm sure that would be great if it happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Because what I'm doing with astrology is I'm trying to, unlike these like Jordan Maxwell or Santos Bonocci's, these real OGs in the game, I'm bringing a little flair to it. I've written all my information. I've uncoded it. It's stuff that my characters figure out. So you're learning while you're enjoying reading. I'm trying to combine this ancient science with a mainstream appeal. And to my knowledge, nobody's doing that but me.
Right. I think I've come across some books that seem to promise that. And, I like his books. However, I read the Dan Brown books after reading things that were a bit more esoteric, and I felt like it was either watered down or it was missing too much. And I felt kind of let down by those more mainstream ones.
But to this day, he's my literary hero. I mean, I have a literary career because of him. Just not literally because of him, but like his cryptograms, his anagram, his style of writing. Whereas my main characters are in their early 20s. They're complete wise asses. There's plenty of dirty humor throughout the book, but I'm mixing it with such esoteric humor. I'm just hoping this blend really works well because it's gotten me a really good, strong, really nice fan base so far, and they love it. So I'm just sitting here trying to turn this into maybe a mini series or something.
Awesome. Yeah, I hope that happens. I would advise people to follow you on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle again? Because Real Mr. Dank.
Real Mr. Dank. Follow me on Twitter or Facebook. I'm Micah Dank. If you're on Facebook, friend me. And I have a group on Facebook called Into the Rabbit Hole, where I post all my interviews and all my work. And like-minded people just get together and they talk. And it's been great. Now, the other thing, too, is if you follow me or reach out to me, I will send you a message directly. I speak to every single person that follows or friends me. And I'll have a talk if you're interested in the books. How's everything going? Do you want to see a couple of my greatest videos? I talk to every single person that reaches out to me. And I'm going to continue to do that until it becomes unmanageable.
Excellent. That's a great way of moving forward. I think a lot of people are going to appreciate that. I have someone here who wants to ask a question, but she says she's podcast shy. I'm asking her to just Okay, here she says, if billionaires are using astrology or this knowledge for some sort of gain, can we correlate this to what Micah has been doing to decode the events of the day? Just if you get that.
Billionaires are using, well, this whole billionaires using astrology shit that comes from J.P. Morgan. J.P. Morgan said that millionaires don't need astrology, billionaires do. So he said that, what, 100 years ago? And it's true. If you get the right person to do your readings, it tells you a lot about yourself. A lot. And people go, what's the point? I know this about myself already. Yeah, but you don't know how your personality interacts with other parts of your personality. That's what this can do. Basically, I mean, I just took as much knowledge as I had, literally, and I put it in 6 books. Now I'm teasing a 7th. I don't know if I'm going to re-sign with my publisher for the 7th, or I'm going to put it out on my own. But as of right now, I have a 6-book deal. 3 are out. The 4th one's coming out in 2 weeks. So if you're interested, I do sell autographed copies.
Yes, yes. Glad you brought that up. In fact, for everyone listening, I did order some of those books. I think they'll be here any day, and I'll make them available at darkmatter.radio, and then you can contact Micah directly.
I know your books. I know your books. I sent them out on Saturday.
Okay, yeah, I expect them any day now. And I'm setting up a bookstore at Dark Matter Digital Network specifically for signed copies of books of all of our featured authors. And anytime we sell them, we'll just replenish them. So I think it's a great way to support writers. And I think what you're doing is great. It's combining fiction with real esoterica. So we definitely want to support that. Now, I have a question from anonymous guest. He says,
Is that his name?
That's his name. Does
Okay.
astrotheology predict or indicate when, quote, they reset the realm, as did Snow in the Hunger Games?
They reset the realm. Give me a sec. Let me think about that. Astrotheology, I'm going to put it to you this way. We're in the age of Aquarius right now, okay? We've been in it since December 21st, 2012. Do you remember 2012? That was the end of the Mayan calendar. They made a big movie about it, a disaster. It was supposed to be the end of the world. It wasn't the end of the world. It was the end of their calendar. It was the end of Pisces. Time ran out. That's all it was. We're in the age of Aquarius now. In the age of the Egyptians, they were the people of Taurus. That's why you look at countless hieroglyphs on their walls, and you can see a bull with a sun between its horns. They're so obviously telling you that they worship the bull, which is Taurus. Then the Jews are the people of Aries. They come along. That's why the Jews smear the lamb's blood on the door in the Bible, in Exodus, to protect them from God smiting the Egyptians' firstborn. That's why they have a lamb bone on their Passover plate. In fact, that's why they blow the ram's horn at the sky, is because they're the people of Aries. That's the ram. They blow the ram's horn. I mean, they make it obvious. People just don't question it. Then in Pisces, you have Christianity that comes around. Pisces is the 2 fish. There's a quote in the Bible that Jesus feeds the masses with 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. Well, if you take it literally, he's got some expanding to do. But if you know what you're talking about, the 2 fish are Pisces. And the 5 loaves of bread, I didn't go over this earlier, but Virgo is the sign of the virgin with the wheat stalk. And the reason Virgo is the virgin with the wheat stalk is because you would look up to the sky, you would see Virgo. You would know that after you planted earlier on in the year, when you see Virgo, you go out to the wheat fields, you gather the wheat. The virgins would go out, or the young women would go out and gather the wheat, and then they would make the bread. Okay? So the 2 fish and the 5 loaves of bread. The 2 fish is Pisces. The loaves of bread is Virgo. Those are opposing signs in the zodiac. What did I say before? What's important is an opposing sign as well as the neighboring sign.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very consistent there.
Just to answer the question, every new sign comes a new god. And we're too early in it to see what it is. I personally think it's going to be merging with the machines. That's what I think this one's going to be. But in the age of Aquarius, it's supposed to be a giant enlightening. We're in the golden era. Everybody's starting to wake up from their naps, and we're starting to question things and get smarter. But you follow the train of thought that I just did. There's supposed to be a new god in Aquarius. That's why all the elites right now are talking about a one world religion, right?
Wow, this is insane. I mean, Elon Musk was just tweeting out the phrase "e-god." I guess Dogecoin backward, and he's always talking about artificial intelligence and neurolinking, and have some sort of higher intelligence interfacing with us in that manner. And
Right.
is that where this
But
new
he's
age?
he's corrupted. He's corrupted. He came on a piece of his real personality came out. He was on Rogan. Did you see his thing on Rogan?
I saw the meme from when he was hitting the spliff, but I didn't listen to the whole thing.
When he was on Rogan, he was talking about how he had tried to warn everybody and no one would listen to him, that we're moving technology too far, that AI is going to be like the downfall of us, and he said no one listened to me. And then 6 months later, look what he's doing. He traded his soul for riches with that. That's what he basically did.
I find it hard to disagree with that. You mentioned anagrams earlier, and when he launched his car into space with a dummy in it, he called the dummy Starman, which is an obvious anagram for Mr. Satan. And he was playing a David Bowie song, David Bowie, the Man Who Fell to Earth. So, there are
Mm-hmm.
some things out there that make me think that Musk might be a
Mm-hmm.
little diabolical.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But don't kid yourself. There's going to be a new religion. If you could, if there is some form of an afterlife, okay, which to me, here's how I see things, okay? Just because I don't think there's a literal God from the Bible. If if there's an afterlife when you die, you will awaken to it. And much like you were born here, you'll be born there and you'll have growing and learning. However, if there's nothing, it'll be really no different than being under anesthesia or non-REM sleep. Just not aware, no consciousness, no five senses giving you any stimulation. So either way, and it's not like you're going to be self-aware that you're dead and that it's not like they're burying you alive and you're stuck there. So the way I see it is that it's nothing to worry about. However, if there was an afterlife and you were able to maybe in 1,000, 1,500 years look back on this earth, just based on what I said, you got to be kidding yourself if you don't think that there's going to be a new world religion that has something to do with the man, whether it's a man in a water pitcher, whether it's a water story, whether there's another flood, whether they're talking about man, the man sign as in AI, I don't know. But every zodiac sign gets a new world religion. That's the rule. And the way that they're shared is by plundering and attacking and murdering people and converting them.
Yes, that does seem to be the pattern. And okay, so you talked about the end of the world, and this is all very fascinating to me because I happen to think that there is an astrotheological story being told through the mass media, as there has been through the Bible. And there are so many movies. I can name like Donnie Darko, for example, that pointed to the end of the world coming. And this phrase "end of the world," as you said, doesn't necessarily mean everything stops. That's the literal interpretation, but that it's just the end of a particular cycle. And so this
Right.
brings me to the question of the tarot cards, which someone is asking about here. The tarot cards seem to be part of the same package when it comes to the same symbols and the same correspondences. Do you have any
Oh,
thoughts on those?
absolutely. That's where the word Torah comes from. Tarot, Torah. It's the same thing. There's
Okay.
three things that the Bible is. I focus mainly on astrotheology. So, but don't kid yourself. It's not the only thing in the Bible. The Bible is astrotheology, the tarot, and it's also alchemy. It's those three things. Okay, true alchemy, which is what I might tease with my seventh book.
Okay, and this again. Okay, so the Torah then is encoded into the Tarot, and the Tarot seems to start with zero. And the way it was explained to me is it goes from a cycle of 0 to 21, and then it starts over again. So at the end of the world, at the end of the sequence, it's just the new beginning, or rather, a new start. And so you're suggesting here that the New Age progresses us into a new paradigm with a new God. And this is actually, the topic of so many different fringe conspiracy theories that there's going to be a new order that's going to replace the old one. And I can actually now see how that's possible if all the elite are on the same sheet with this basic program that you're describing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
Okay, now I'm
It's
looking here in
true.
the chat here. If anybody has any questions, feel free to call in. Now, someone here, 33 Ren, says, he has a question here. Are the elite taking advantage of a new age that was ushered in with the Jupiter Saturn conjunction? And he's referring to the 1220 conjunction last year.
So for that, I'd refer to you something called the revelation of the method. Are you familiar with it?
I've heard the expression a few times, but if you could explain it.
Sure, I'll explain it so that you never lose it. Um, the revelation of the method basically says that the elites are able to do whatever they want, but there's a caveat. They have to show you what they're doing. They either tell it to you, show it in music videos, show it in movies. They have to tell you, show it in news articles. They have to do it. And the reason they have to do it is because karma is the one true constant in the universe. Okay? Maybe mathematics, but karma for sure. And by showing you what they do, that the way it's presented to them is, well, we showed them, they're not doing anything about it, so let's just do it. Okay? And you have to understand too is that when they do this stuff, um, excuse me, when they do this stuff and they show it to you, they love when people are out there talking about it, because what they could do is they could use disinformation, or they could just put up conspiracies against one another. So they love that. But back to the Tara and the and astrotheology and all that stuff. When you're talking about that stuff, you have to understand is that the actually I forget where I'm going with this.
Well,
Never mind.
you brought up consent though. Implied, in other words, you're suggesting that that we're more or less consenting to it because they're basically advertising the new age in everything we see, everything we watch, and all the products we consume. And the celebrities have been selling us on the new age. I brought up David Bowie a moment ago because he's been someone whose his career has moved in tandem with the space age, from Space Odyssey on forward. And I think it's very interesting that his music has been featured in outer space so many times, most recently with the Tesla Roadster. My point
Yeah.
being here is that it's almost like they made sure that everybody got the message that man is going to Mars. And we got the message.
Oh yeah. There's an interesting thing too about Mars that not a lot of people are talking about. There's a radioactive isotope in the atmosphere of Mars that could have only gotten there from an explosion within a nuclear weapon. Okay, no one seems to talk about that. So I suggest everybody do a little research into it or what have you, reach out, but I'm all about spreading that.
Okay, absolutely. I mean, it would certainly conflict with the latest footage of the Mars lander that I found to be somewhat questionable. I have another question for you here from Hoaxahontis. She asks, what does he think about deep fakes or Biden being a hologram? Any opinions there?
Oh, okay. First of all, the deep fake with Tom Cruise was absolutely terrifying. It's scary what they can do nowadays. I think digital forensics will eventually catch up. Much like viruses, you end up figuring out how to fix them. But as far as not Biden goes, I don't talk about politics. My publicist told me at first, when I first signed on with her, she said, look, don't talk politics because you'll alienate half the people. And the way I see it is it's kind of like Michael Jordan said. Michael Jordan said, Republicans and Democrats both buy uh, Nikes. Why am I going to tell half of them to fuck off? Basically, in so many words. And that's kind of how I feel. I mean, I have my own opinions, that's for sure. But I don't get into politics.
Sure. I mean, what you're talking about is actually very timeless anyway. And I think when you get kind of mired up in the topical politics of the day, the content's not going to really age well in 5 or 6 years. So, no, I'm happy to get away from that anytime that we can. And I'm definitely glad that you're on here again. I have a couple more people here asking questions.
Yeah,
Hassan,
send them all over.
okay, if anybody wants to call, they can. Also, they can ask questions in the chat. Knockout Bear says, I'm sorry, no, sorry. Hassan asks, do you believe that reincarnation is real? Is it implied in what they're putting in these books?
I do. I do. I think that I think that when you're born, right before you're born, you sign a soul contract. I think that you choose your parents because you have to learn the lessons in life that you need to learn through them. I mean, if my parents weren't religious, I wouldn't be who I am now. And everything is a reaction. Look, the bottom line is if you're happy with who you are at this exact moment, every decision you've ever made leads up to it. So there can't be any regrets.
Okay, very interesting answer there. I have another person asking, do you think that the planets are actually solid, that they're places we can go to?
Not all of them are. Not all of them are. I think Jupiter's a gas giant. Um, Jupiter, I know for sure, is a gas giant. We cannot. However, there's going to be. If you ever looked, they show the picture of the seven planets like there's nothing in between them. Not like there's no Kuiper belt or the asteroid belt or all this stuff. Do you have any idea how many moons these planets have? I mean, there's so many places we can go to. Absolutely. But
Uh,
believe me, if you ever Google space debris when you have a free chance, and you'll see how much crap we've put into the atmosphere. Okay, and that's just a fun thing
no,
to do.
that's a
But
fun topic anyway, because last month there was a plane flying in Colorado and parts fell onto a house, and it reminded a lot of people of Donnie Darko.
Donnie Darko,
Well, and you know what? It landed on a house on like Elmwood, which thinks Elm Street. Donnie Darko's a sleepwalker, 1300th block or something. So, it's all just like, wow, is this just reality imitating fiction? But then at the same, when that came out, I noticed NBC's advertising a show called Debris about space junk. And then Leonardo DiCaprio's in a movie called Don't Look Up about asteroids. And so I'm
right?
I'm kind of expecting that the new age will be inaugurated by the sky falling, quite possibly. I
Well,
wouldn't be
then,
surprised.
well, then you can get into Operation Bluebeam. You can talk about the Book of Revelation. Then, I mean, sure. However, they're going to do it. Absolutely.
Okay, Knockout Bear, this is her actual question. She says she thinks that the footage of stars looks like cymatics in water when observed through a P900. So that's a thing I've seen. It's pretty prevalent on YouTube. People will look at the stars and they're thinking that they're not even physical landable objects. But you explained you think that they're mostly what they say that they are, right?
Well, I do. I do. I mean, my bread and butter is talking about the stars and physically knowing where they literally are.
Okay,
And
fair enough.
yeah,
Okay, excellent question. Okay, let's go ahead. 833-311-1984 if anybody wants to call and join in, or you can ask your questions here. And really quick here, just make sure I want to get the name of your. If someone wants to start off with one of your series, what would you start them off with? If
you have to read them in order. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a fan of my own work. I'm just saying is that it's a storyline. It's one long storyline. So you're going to be lost if you start on anything but one.
Excellent. Okay. I'm going to put the link in the chat. And also, for anybody who's catching this afterward, I'll put the links to your books and to your Twitter feed and your Facebook account right below. That way
Right.
they can get in touch with you. I'm going through some other comments. Sincro says, what do you think about the bloodline of Jesus Christ?
Well, I don't think it's. Well, my contention is that Jesus wasn't real. He's actually the Son, S-U-N, of God, not the S-O-N of God. Don't think there's a real bloodline there. But if you're talking about like the black nobility going all the way back to the Egyptians, maybe the Osirica secret, uh, what do you call them? Sect. Then yeah, there are 13 Illuminati bloodlines out there. And one of them, the Borgia family, actually gave us the face of white Jesus. His name was Caesar Borgia. He was the bastard son of Pope Alexander VI. And before then, in the 1600s, there was no picture of Jesus. And it wasn't like Muhammad where you weren't allowed to draw him. There just wasn't any picture of Jesus for whatever reason. And Pope Alexander VI, and yes, popes used to have kids out of wedlock all the time because they never got married, but they would have kids. Pope Alexander VI made his son the face of Jesus. And if you look up Caesar Borgia in Google, you could see that I'm telling the truth. It's the same face.
Wow.
So yeah,
I'm sorry. I'm glad you answered that question. You brought it up earlier about the white Jesus and Caesar Borgia. That makes a whole lot of sense. It's actually kind of shocking though when you think about how that's been universalized as the face of the Son of God, and just how.
Oh yeah.
Okay, we have time for a couple more questions. Someone here says, what do you think about Adam and Eve?
I'd like that question to be a little more specific.
Okay, actually the question is, what does he think they were?
They're just metaphors for the divine masculine and the divine feminine energies, the right and left brain.
Okay, and I think we have one more question, and that's probably all we have time for. Salty Siren says, was Eve a hermaphrodite, I believe she means, since she's a man with a rib? I don't know if that's a serious question.
So I hope you're not believing that story was literal, is my answer, I guess.
Okay, yeah.
No, but technically, though, she would be an XX chromosome. I'm sorry, an XY, because if she's from a man's rib. But then you have to explain how you make a fleshy vagina out of a rib, and I just don't want to do that.
Yeah, let's. Okay, one more question here from Connor G. He says, any thoughts on John Dee's book on Enochian magic?
I have not yet read John Dee's book, but I've heard his name coming around the circuit a little bit. I'm going to have to check it out eventually. But right now I'm kind of enumerated in the Enuma Elish, because I'm going to be doing a podcast on that at some point to see if I can find any astrotheology in it. And there's a book out called Anna, Grandmother of Jesus, that one of my blind fans like keeps insisting that I get, and finally I was like, all right, I'll get it. So I got to read that too. So that's basically where I'm at with those.
Okay, cool. Well, hey, this has been great. I'm glad that you're able to take questions. And anytime we do this in the future, of course, phones are open now, so people are free to call in. So that may happen here in the future. And again, I'm putting a bookstore up at darkmatter.radio. And so we'll have your signed copies there. And beneath this particular post, I'll put links to...
When do you think you'll have that bookstore up?
I'll have the bookstore up tonight. So I'm putting the relevant links below to your books. I want to say thanks again for joining in and taking questions. And I'm sure next time we'll have some people calling in.
Yeah, we won't be able to do anything until like middle or late April, though, but we'll figure something out. Just reach out to me. We'll figure out what we'll talk about next.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to stocking your books in the store, and I'll be in touch with you.
I look forward to you buying a ton of my books.
Yeah, I hope it turns out to be that way, because I personally have a vested interest in this information going out there, because the more people who talk about it, the more interesting this whole conversation gets. I really feel like it started with Jordan Maxwell, and I like the direction that you're taking it. So thanks again for joining us.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate it. Thanks to everyone that was listening.
All right, everybody. That was Micah Dank. And again, for some reason, the phone system didn't take a third caller, which is fine. No big deal. And go to darkmatter.radio. That's the best place to go, because you'll be able to get all the relevant links and information. And then, of course, you can catch this on a replay. So thanks again for joining live. I'm going to return to the 24/7 stream now.
Thank you for listening to the Dark Matter Digital Network, the top paranormal streaming radio on the internet. Join us for live call-in shows, podcasts, and special guests. Go to darkmatter.news to hear the most current news from the fringe and beyond. Got something to say? Leave a voicemail at the wormhole for on-air play at darkmatter.radio.